Well, it's a treat to have you for a little extra session here and sit down.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Anything else for the founder of the iconic UGGs here?
I've got to ask. 2 a.m. call. Gordon's saying, "Fuck George."
Yeah.
You know, he didn't try to get a piece of the company at that point.
No, he was all about selling skins. Yeah.
Just for the sake of getting back. Into
Yeah, and it was like very righteous indignation. Like, fuck him.
Yeah.
You know, you don't treat somebody like that.
Yeah.
You know, you should have at least told him. You know.
Do you think in this era, do you think that same like dynamic in a supplier, do you think they would try to get a piece?
Yeah. The hardest part of a product business is when you're really successful, because you outstrip your ability to use your capital over and over and over again. So keeping up with, like, we were doubling every year, and at 100,000 you can double to 200,000, but you get to 5 million and 10 and then 20. You know, the multiples become so much more difficult, and quite often the suppliers, like, any golfers here, do you know the name Ashworth?
Yeah.
Ashworth, clothing. Yeah. He's a good buddy of mine. In fact, we started at the same time in San Diego, and whenever I was in the shit, he was doing good, and we'd bootstrap it, and then 6 months later, it's, so he designed golf clothing, and he built his first, got a partner in, money partner, and built it up to about 300 million, and this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, which is a huge company for then. And eventually the mills that supply all the garment material, whether it's t-shirts or crew necks or whatever, they start to think, well, fuck, it's 400 million, and what do we need you for, John? You know, we've got the business supplying going on, and so they cut him out, him and his investor. So he started a second one, he ended up getting Quicksilver to invest in the beginning of it, and then Quicksilver sold out to TaylorMade, and then it became a $500 million business, and the mills go, well, shit, thanks, Joe, we don't need you anymore. And so now he's on his third one, which is a company called Link Soul, which is, he still maintains 100% of that one. But the biggest problem when you're starting a product-based business is your success, because this sash bag, we jumped from 4 to 7 million, and now the manufacturer, who's also doing a lot of financing, is starting to call the shots, and it's deja vu for me. I've got my radars up on what's about to happen. So we've got to find ourselves new manufacturers and different sources of financing, like ASAP.
How will you help? It's a female founder there you're working with. How will you help her decide? You're a partner in it, or you're a co-founder?
I've got a small piece of it. Yeah.
How are you going to help her with everything you know, and you've seen these problems coming? How are you going to help her decide when it's time to think about selling?
I hate to answer this, not the selling part, but how am I going to help her? When I met her, nearly 10 years ago, I thought, oh, it's perfect. It's lamb. I understand how hard it is to get the raw material. I understand how hard it is to knock off. She's got a brilliant design. This is like Uggs all over again. I can really help her avoid all the pitfalls. Well, fuck, we've hit every pothole. Every single pothole that I did with Ugg.
She's like, what good are you?
No, well,
it's not about avoiding it, but about you've been there before.
I've been there before, and I've been able to see it coming and help, minimize the thing. But the thing is, the business has a life of its own. It has needs, and depending on what size the business is, it requires certain things. And a lot of it's financing, a lot of it's sometimes marketing, sometimes, there's always very to play to keep it balanced. But no, we I minimized the damage on many issues, but still fell into all of them.
You're teaching her character. She got it.
Yeah, and she's brilliant. I'm so proud of her for the way she handles it. It turns out that a woman was at one of my very, very early talks. I don't think I'd even started getting paid at this point in my speaking career.
Are we paying?
And this woman heard me talk, who was an investor in her business, and she said, "You got to meet Brian." And when we met at a coffee in the Starbucks, and the minute I touched the product, and I was, oh my God, this is perfect. And her smarts and her drive, and it turned out she's way exceeded. Like, she knows the algorithms in Amazon, Facebook. Or she runs a world that I don't even go into, and she's brilliant at it. And the amount of statistics we get out of it, the amount of the surprising thing is the amount of repeat business that we get from those people, all because of her knowledge of how the systems run. I can remember in '95 we just put desktop computers on about 6 offices in the complex, and I was walking up the corridor, and I backtracked to my secretary who took shorthand. I said, "Hey, Nikki, take down this letter for me," and she did, and I started walking away, and she said, "Brian, you can do this yourself now." And I went, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, we have emails now." And I had to I said to her, "I'll never need to learn emails, I've got you, right?" But, before you know it, she's that step way ahead, where she knows all about emails and I've never heard of them, when you go into
Probably the equivalent today of someone saying, "I don't need to learn about AI."
Yeah. You're very right.
It struck me that, like, how few of us work with or know entrepreneurs or business owners that even get to that $5, $7, $10, $15 million level of success. And that's what they're striving for. But what I heard you say, and you said this to me yesterday, is that, because I asked you, how'd you decide when to sell? And you said, well, we were doing about 15 million, and then Oprah got involved, and you said, I knew right then this wasn't my company to take from there. And that, I was like, why? That seems like the inflection point that you get excited about. Yeah. That's what you've been waiting for. And like with Mustafa and Reza Footwear, when Steve Aoki got a pair and wore them, I know that was a big inflection point. But he has had the same problem. He's like, that success brings a whole new level of challenges.
It's horrific,
and it's almost killed Reza at a point. They got 80,000 people on the wait list overnight because of Steve Aoki, and he can't deliver.
It's a bitch,
Yeah. That's encouraging. That's so encouraging.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
You know what? If you're successful, it's a bitch. That's what we should put that on our marketing. Success is a bitch.
I like the analogy earlier when you were talking about business valuations being similar to like a house and the upgrades and all those things. And if I could ask you to, when I know houses well, that's my business. And so I tell people, we're generally within the range, but occasionally there might be some things, certain features that allow you to price it outside the range where you have established proof. And the same thing for the downside, obviously. But when you're looking at businesses that sell at the top end of their valuation or push a higher multiple, what are the types of things that can help get an entrepreneur to that point?
Well, now you're asking for a formal presentation.
I don't want to waste your time. This is what I actually want to hear way more about that. Maybe not even now or another time.
And I'd like to hear more too. Because with the sash bag business, we're trying to position that now, and I don't really know.
He said to me yesterday, he said, what's happening tomorrow? And I said, well, you're going to speak, we're going to have a little session, and then we're doing this presentation on the 8 drivers of business valuation. He said, can I stick around for that? He said, because I'm helped with the sash business, we need to get this thing.
Yeah.
I can try to answer some of these questions as best as possible, but we typically top out at about 50 million enterprise value. So I'm not as knowledgeable when it comes to like prepping for an IPO or publicly traded buyer. A lot of the businesses we work with would have been about the size when you sold out, right? So, really, what are buyers buying? They like a home, maybe there's a couple of things you can do, or maybe situationally there's like a buyer that's relocated and they just have to have it, so they're willing to outbid everybody else. That might happen with a business sale, like there might be an outlier unicorn, but you can't count on it, right? You have to count on what the norm is. So what buyers are looking for are return on investment. So if your company is not profitable or there's no path to profitability, you probably shouldn't consider selling. So really earnings are going to be your top.
Right.
Like you've been selling for a revenue multiplier, that's something we don't see very often.
Right.
Now maybe some SaaS companies or really fast growth companies that are cutting edge technologies may be able to sell for a revenue multiplier, but I would not count on that. I would not advise anybody that a revenue multiplier is within the realm of possibility. I think the other things I would say that we don't, at this level of like sub 50 million, and it's really mostly like 5, 10, $15 million companies, very few of them have a developed like lead generation and sales system. They don't have it. A lot of it's the owner, or they might have a salesperson, right? So I would say that is an outlier. If you can develop a sales system, lead gen system, that's huge, right? A lot of them are too reliant on the actual ownership of the business for certain things too. So there are a lot of things, many, if you've read the E-Myth, if you haven't, I'd recommend the E-Myth.
Yeah.
Most businesses are founded and owned by technicians, and they have a really hard time letting go of certain things, right? With the growth of your business, you just have to let go.
Yeah, I read that book 30 years ago, yeah.
Every business needs kind of the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician, right? And most small businesses are technicians that have a hard time managing, and they have a hard time with vision. So their company gets to a certain point, and they just are stuck. They can't take it any farther because they can't let go.
Yeah.
If you can't let go and delegate, you can't grow, right? So to the extent that you can let go, bring in the people, and I guess that'd lead me to the next point. So like human capital, I guess recruiting and retention, right? To figure that out also puts a business, can get you that premium as well, because the buyer will say, okay, like you have a good culture, you have a way of bringing people in and then retaining them in that culture. That's a path to growth. I think that, and I guess I would say, what do we deal with all the time? What's the EBITDA? What's the EBITDA? What's the EBITDA, right? I mean, there are thresholds of EBITDA that put you in different tiers of buyers, right? If you're doing 500,000 to 750,000 in EBITDA, you're probably not going to be attractive to private equity as a bolt-on. You're not going to be attractive to a family office. There's going to be that segment of buyers that's just going to ignore your company. If you can hit that 2 million EBITDA, or you can show a path to 2 million EBITDA, suddenly that really family office, independent sponsor, professional buyers. And I think the last thing I'll say, and this will be a plug for us, is how is the company marketed? If you're selling a home, and so let's say I'm going to sell my house, right? And I'm interviewing 2 realtors, and this is really my world, by the way. I interviewed the first realtor, and I say, well, what's going to be your marketing strategy? And they say, well, I've got this Rolodex of buyers that made offers in the last couple of homes I represented. I'm going to go to them. That's it. That's all I do, right? And I interview the second realtor, and they say, well, we're going to do 2 open houses, Instagram ads, Facebook, sign out front, email blast, MLS, GRAR. I'm in Grand Rapids, so we're going to blow it out, right? Which realtor would you be more inclined to go to? The second one, right? Because you're going to get more traffic, which means you're going to get more interest, and you're going to get more offers. Most folks in our industry literally do the first option. They go to buyers that they know, or they research a list from PitchBook, they cap it at 100, and they go out to that. Our philosophy has been to blow out the market. Not in a confidential way, but attract a lot of interest and then build infrastructure to process the interest. Because we know, just like when you're marketing a house, if you have 40 people coming to an open house, are you going to get 40 offers? Maybe you're going to get, 3, 4, right? Same in business.
When you're doing that, are you also generating some FOMO in there as you're doing it? Is to get the bids up?
That's our main.
Well, think about it too. How do you press the multiple up? I mean, there's things that you can do like from an infrastructure or cosmetically to the company to make it more attractive. But ultimately, you need to have a mechanism to attract the buyers. And if you can get multiple offers, then you can really start to turn the screws on the buyers, right? You can really start to improve your valuation, your deal structure, your certainty to close, your earnest money deposit in your LOI. I mean, we've even been able to engineer things into LOIs when we have mass competition that will say things like, if you retrade or if you try to renegotiate during the LOI period, exclusivity is gone. And we've had instances where companies' performance has fallen off a bit during the LOI period, and the buyer still went through with the sale because they knew if they tried to renegotiate, we just pull it.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you don't have a market, right?
Yeah.
I think the other, Max hit it right on the head. Buyers are looking at return on investment. I think most business owners think their baby's beautiful. And
I love that.
yeah, you have to look at it from an acquirer's perspective. You're selling your business, the acquirer's buying it because they want return on investment, and there's a couple of things that play into that. They have a price that they're willing to pay, but they're looking at it as two checks. They're writing a check to you as the seller, and then they're writing a check to the company as an investment that they need to put into it to grow. And the more that they believe that they have to put into the company to grow, the less they're going to pay the owner. So as you think of building your business to a point to where you can minimize the capital that a buyer is going to need to influx into the business, then that's going to enhance your take from the sale. The other aspect too is understanding what your end game is. So how do you want to sell? And this can be driven by what you want to accomplish personally, the legacy that you want to leave, can affect your vision and how you look at ultimately transitioning and selling your business. But if you know what your end outcome is, it'll help you identify how you're going to sell. You could sell to your management team, you could transition it to family members, you could sell it to your employees, you could sell it to a strategic buyer, you could grow it to where you do an IPO. But each one of those is going to have a different outcome. And Max is exactly right. Size matters. The more revenue you have, the more free cash flow, the more EBITDA you have, opens up additional doors. And you really want to be attractive to the buyer. And one of the ways to do that is to show them the growth potential. Like I would imagine Brian had more leverage in his negotiations, knowing that he was there at $25 million of sales booked, plus they had Oprah on the hook that was going to drive sales. There's growth potential there that Brian can communicate and sell to the buyers. I mean, if you look at, in previous sessions, we've looked at a couple of scenarios, and I think I like Stephanie Breedlove. She was a CPA. She worked for I think she worked for Deloitte. She worked for one of the big four years ago. But she reached a point in life to where her firm was Breedlove and Associates. She reached a point in life where she had children, and her and her husband were both in accounting, and they wanted to simply find a nanny. Well, so they could continue to work full time. Well, finding a nanny at that point was figuring out how to pay them was a nightmare because nobody wanted to do it. Like she called up ADP, she called up some of the other large accounting payroll firms, and they just wouldn't do it. So she ended up creating a business model out of it, and she built this model. She built this business up over years, and I think she ended up getting to $9 to $10 million of revenue over 25 years.
Just in creating a payment system for nannies.
Yeah, payment and filing taxes for nannies. And she focused just on that one thing. She got to a point in the road to where she could decide to offer more products and services to her existing clients. She realized that was going to dilute the value and the growth of the organization, so she just singularly focused on providing payroll service and tax filing services for nannies. Well, she got to a point where her business was attractive because she had size, she had EBITDA, but she knew what she wanted to do from an end game perspective, and she went out and actually chose her buyer. She went to care.com. And at the time, are you guys familiar with care.com?
I'm not.
If you have at an age where you need childcare, care.com is a place to go. Well, care.com had 7 million subscribers. She only had 10,000 clients. But she could communicate, she could market to care.com. Listen, if you would just get 1% of your 7 million subscribers to use our service, you're going to have a significant amount of revenue. She ended up selling her company for $54 million.
The $9 million.
Yeah, and $9 million revenue. She sold it for 6 times revenue. That's unheard of. But she knew what her end game was, and she knew that if she found a buyer that could rapidly grow what she built, she's going to command a higher value.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to actually build it to that.
Correct.
Right. She was able to just utilize their positioning and what they're already doing and made that marriage, help them realize that marriage, they're going to take it to that growth and beyond that growth. That was really...
Well, so when you sold to Deckers, was it a similar, like Deckers saw the opportunity to grow faster with your product because of the seasonality issue?
Yep.
And then I'm curious how much you'll share is up to you, but how did you decide on a multiple, or what kind of multiple could you command knowing Oprah was coming on?
Yeah. When I met with Doug the first time, we'd always joked, coming in, no, I got a coffee years ago, coming in and out of surf shops, hey, you should buy me, you can't afford it, just all that bullshit. And then we lost track of each other for like 8 or 10 years. Even though we kept it, I knew what he was up to, we didn't actually see each other because we weren't on the road anymore. And so when I saw him, it was an obvious solution that I hadn't thought about. But the minute I saw him, I knew he had 28 to 30 million in the bank because I'd seen all the offering documents and everything from the IPO and everything. So, but it never occurred to me to go call him until I saw him, and then went, "Fuck, it's perfect," So that was, serendipitous. And then when we got the accountants talking, they and my main investor sort of drove the train on what the actual valuation would be, and we said we wouldn't tell anybody about that, but it was a small multiple, but it was low 8 figures that we sold out for, and it was way more than I ever expected to get out of it when I first started. In fact, when I sold the company to Deckers, I had to go and address the national sales force because they were going to take over the business, and I said, "Yeah, congratulations, you guys have just inherited a $200 million brand, right? And these are all the Tiva salesmen that are doing 60 million, and they're going, oh, fuck you, 200 million, bullshit, and this groan went out through the audience, So it was ironic that, UGG should be the $2 billion brand, and Teva's down to like 16 again.
Is it? I wonder about that.
Yeah.
You said 16
million.
million?
Teva's only doing about 6.
I think it's down to about 16. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, it's the branding. There's a lot of companies with great sandals coming into their market, and they just haven't kept up with the branding. Like
Do you have any idea what Birkenstocks do?
Not really. No.
I was curious.
Yeah.
They seem to be as powerful a brand.
They're resilient. God, I expected them to die when I was still doing UGG.
There's a whole resurgence right now.
Yeah, it's huge.
Oh my
My
God.
wife just bought some.
It's huge.
Like I still have.
Yeah.
pair that I bought in 1994.
It's such
Yeah.
a good product. Yeah, it's like, it
Oh,
reminds me of
you
a-
got the
Well, it's like
modern
Vans.
ones.
Vans is huge research.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can't say that we did a whole... to me, it was get investment now or we're going to fold the company. So we didn't have the luxury of going out and doing... we had audited financials, we had all the stuff you need, and the due diligence took a year, or it was 8 months it took, and so we had everything that they requested, but we didn't have standard operating procedures. We didn't have it in a booklet to give to them. We had to go and, well, you want what? Okay, we'll get it. Every week was, you want what? Okay, and so we eventually went through the process, but it wasn't like we orchestrated a premeditated package for sale. It was
the
desperation.
serendipity being at the baggage claim with him. And
Yeah.
It's neat.
I have a question for you. You stick with me here, I will get to the question. I promise.
Okay.
So you talked about one of the keys to building a $1 billion business was capturing, sort of a global shift in the marketplace or the culture that you can't really predict. So when you did that, one of the other keys you mentioned was get out in front and then run fast.
Yeah.
You can only innovate product in so many ways. Like, as far as I know, there's no AI UGG out there.
Not yet, yeah.
So how do you create that lasting power in the marketplace that does shift? All things told you, fashion changes tomorrow.
Right.
How do you create that staying power in a product? Does it change for a service-based business?
There's two things. Remember, you can't give birth to adults, right? So you can't predict the societal shift that's happening, that's coming, right? Because it may be 20 years out. I gave a talk to the corporate office at Zoom before COVID, and did the talk, very similar to today's talk, and then the owners took me out for dinner, and the founders, the owners, and they were just pissing and moaning that we got it up to 200 million, and God, there's not everything we tried doesn't seem to add to the volume, and we think we've maxed out every business in America that they're now all on Zoom, and we just don't know what the fuck to do to grow. A year later, COVID hits, and they hit the billion, like the fastest company I've ever seen to hit $1 billion from 200 million. But if they had not have been doing 200 million, they would have missed the whole opportunity. So it's that giving birth to adults, like tadpole, and then when that happens, you're a frog. Yeah? Here's a statistic you'll be amazed at. I read Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog, about building Nike. Would you believe, my book's chronological, his book was chronological. Would you believe the first 5 years sales of UGG was greater than the first 5 years sales of Nike? Mm-hmm. Right? Wow. So it doesn't matter what the company is, you're going to go through this birth to adult thing. They were floundering for years after years. And to me, they were my competitor, them and Reebok. It pissed me off. We had a seasonal business, and they were able to go 12 months of the year. So I could never compete in that level. But, to be in the billions now, it just took time. And
go ahead.
I think in this group, one of the youngest people, a student in Michigan State University, and I really thank everyone for being here. I learned a lot. One thing that I really find interesting is that in Michigan State University, they teach about entrepreneurship and growth to startups. We learn about value proposition and everything, but one thing that I wish I could learn more is the brand, like what you're emphasizing. That's something that I have a hard time understanding on how do we grow the brand. In high school, we talk about it. It sells, and people buy it to grow, but I want to know how, right? So my question is that when you just started Buzz, Was there a specific strategy of who to connect with and talk about? Because I know that you talk about like they should wear the shoes so that you can actually feel the product. But do you do that to every person that you meet, or is there a specific people that you maybe in a higher position that you may network to show your product to maybe maximize your branding?
Anyone who I could talk to, I would try and pitch, right? Like I literally went to swap meets and street fairs and stuff, anywhere I could get an audience. But again, I had the knowledge that 1 in 2 people in Australia owned a pair of sheepskin boots or some sort of footwear. So I knew how big it was. The answer is no. I never had a strategy on who to sell, except I thought when I started, it was, let's go to the shoe stores. They're going to love it. Totally shut out. And then the surf shops, thinking, oh, they're going to love it, shut out again. And so it came back to the fact that I had to build a brand, not sell product, right? And it wasn't until I got those 2 young surfers that was the beginning of the brand, because there was an identity and people wanted to be part of that. And oh my God, if I just had a pair of UGG boots, I could meet Mike Pass, just that type of mentality. And so the branding is what was critical. So if if you have a product, it's not about the product. It's who do I get to promote this for me? That's why influencers, like my 2 surfers, they were influencers, right? 40 years before influencing became a thing. They were influencers. And so you've got to figure out, how can I make this something that everybody just wants, whether it's exclusivity or you can't get it unless you know so-and-so. There's got to be some trick that you can build a belongingness by consumers, and that's the trick.
Gotcha. But also, like, one thing that I want to know is that as we grow, we need to have like maybe lawyers or accountants to help the business sustain and maintain what they need and grow. As a student, as like in college, we do have access to some like accountants and lawyers to talk about their experience, but that's kind of a bit untapped. Is there like a way to find good business partners, like good accountants or good people to partner with, or is it just like word of mouth that you find?
This is such a college question.
Yeah.
Right? We talked earlier, and I was telling him a story about this guy, Jeff, who founded the action sports industry in California. We were really good friends. And we were talking about someone that said that they were going to college to become an entrepreneur. And he said, fuck, that's like practicing to go out on a date. Right? Because you can't learn. Now, you asked me about lawyers and accountants. You don't get them until you desperately need them, right? That's something you learn.
Most entrepreneurs get them slightly after they need them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, seriously after.
I probably should have hired one a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you come to me a year ago? Yeah, I've had that so many
Make some
times.
friends at the law school over there.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, is that, the lawyers and accountants, you're what we call it our dirty dozen, right? All the people in the industry that you need that are going to be good allies for you. Most of those you're not going to meet. The more that you want, you're not going to meet at networking events. You're not going to. So it's really finding that first one person who can then start connecting you with people in the network, and then follow that network, because you want a team of people who all are respect each other, work together on other things. So like my CPA, like it's always a path, because as you grow, there's somebody who's great for you then, and then they're not going to be able to handle you when you go from $25,000 a year to $500,000 a year. So then but you want to get in with a team of people, because they're going to be happy to refer each other and want to see you succeed, because your success is going to lead to their success, and it's always a two-way street with referrals. So get in with that 1 or 2 that you really trust, allow them, lean on them to build that team, and then just make sure you're always looking and evaluating and doing your SWOT analysis back to college. So, every year to figure out where are my pain points? Where do I need to expand my capacity? Where can my team improve? Or what do I need to expand into? And I think that if you follow that wormhole, that's the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, even this bag company that I have, there's two things that, when you get to $2 million in sales, it's a bitch of a time because you're too big to be small and you're too small to be big. And you need a full-time CFO, you can't afford it. You need a warehouse manager full-time, you can't afford it. So it's a total compromise all the way. But don't go into a business thinking you need lawyers and accountants. They'll come when you need them. And it's always going to be painful.
Thank you, everyone. We're gonna cut because we can't afford his overtime rate. It's expensive.
Need another muffin.
Yeah, we have actually. There's a lunch out. There's a bunch of food. So grab some food, eat here, or take some on your way. We kind of got disorganized in the way we broke this up, and we had a bigger group we thought. So there's a bunch of food out there.
Okay.
Right, Brandon?
Last time we didn't eat very much.
I know. No, we ordered food again. There's some healthier food out there than muffins, so help yourself to lunch.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, yeah. Thank you.